The jeers and laughter from the wedding guests pierced through the warm Texas air like bullets, striking Abigail Reynolds' heart as she stood frozen in the doorway of the small church in Cedar Creek. The year was 1878, and what should have been the happiest day of her life had transformed into her greatest humiliation. "Look at that dress straining at the seams," someone called out, followed by suppressed giggles. "Poor Thomas, having to carry that burden across the threshold," another voice added, louder this time. Abigail clutched her bouquet of wildflowers tighter, feeling the stems bend beneath her trembling fingers. She'd known this moment would be difficult, had prepared herself for the stares and whispers that had followed her all her life, but nothing could have readied her for the open mockery on what was meant to be her sacred day. The church had fallen silent when she'd first appeared, but not out of reverence or awe. It was the silence of shock, quickly followed by the unmistakable sounds of ridicule. Her wedding gown, sewn painstakingly by her own hands over countless evenings, suddenly felt too tight, too revealing of the curves she'd always tried to conceal. Then, as if the universe had decided her humiliation wasn't complete, she saw her groom's face. Thomas Wilkins, the banker's son who had courted her for 6 months, looked at her not with love but with embarrassment. His eyes darted around the church, registering the reactions of the townsfolk, and Abigail watched as something inside him broke or perhaps revealed itself for what it had always been. I can't," he muttered, loud enough for those in the front pews to hear. "This isn't, I'm sorry." The murmurs grew louder as Thomas turned and walked, not ran, which somehow made it worse, down the side aisle and out the back door of the church, leaving Abigail standing alone before God and the entire population of Cedar Creek. Her mother rushed forward, tears streaming down her wrinkled face. "Abby, darling," but Abigail couldn't bear it. Not the pity, not the mockery, not another moment in this place where her worth had been so publicly measured and found wanting. She gathered her skirts, turned, and fled. She ran as best she could in her wedding gown, ignoring the calls from her family, pushing past the curious onlookers who had gathered outside the church to witness the spectacle. Her tears blinded her, and she barely registered the direction she was taking, only knowing she needed to be away from the laughter, away from Thomas's betrayal, away from the life she'd foolishly believed could be hers. Cedar Creek was a small frontier town, and it didn't take long for Abigail to reach its edges. She found herself on the dusty road leading out toward the ranches that surrounded the settlement. Her white satin slippers were already ruined, covered in dirt, and starting to tear at the seams. Her carefully arranged hair had come loose, copper strands falling across her tear-stained face. She stopped at last, lungs burning, at the crossroads where the main road split toward the neighboring town of Riverton. Collapsing onto a large rock at the side of the road, she finally allowed herself to truly cry, great heaving sobs that shook her entire body. "Miss, are you all right?" The deep voice startled her, and she looked up to see a man on horseback watching her with concern. He was silhouetted against the bright afternoon sun, his features hidden beneath the brim of a wide cowboy hat. "Please," she said between sobs, "just leave me be." Instead of riding away, the man dismounted. As he approached, she could see him more clearly, tall and broad-shouldered, with sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of a summer sky. He wasn't from Cedar Creek. She would have remembered him. "Forgive the intrusion, madam, but it ain't right to leave a lady in distress," he said, his voice gentle despite its roughness. He removed his hat, revealing thick brown hair. "Owen Ryder, at your service." Abigail quickly wiped her tears, suddenly conscious of her disheveled appearance. "I appreciate your concern, Mr. Ryder, but I assure you I'm fine." His eyes took in her wedding dress, now smudged with dirt and grass stains. "Begging your pardon, but you don't look fine. You look like a bride who's missing a wedding." Fresh tears welled in Abigail's eyes at his words. "There is no wedding, not anymore." Owen Ryder studied her face, his expression free of the judgment or pity she'd come to expect. Whatever happened back there, he nodded toward town, it's their loss, not yours. You don't understand, Abigail said, rising from the rock, wincing as her blistered feet protested. The whole town was laughing. He left me at the altar because… She gestured helplessly at herself, at the body that had always been too much, too round, too unacceptable. Because folks can be cruel and men can be fools, Owen suggested, a spark of anger flashing in his eyes. I've known plenty of both. A wagon approached from the direction of Cedar Creek, and Abigail turned away, not wanting to face anyone from town. Owen noticed her distress and acted quickly. My ranch is just over that rise, he said, pointing to the rolling hills beyond the crossroads. I can offer you a safe place to collect yourself away from prying eyes. Abigail hesitated. She didn't know this man, but something in his straightforward manner and the kindness in his eyes made her trust him more than she trusted the familiar faces who had mocked her just an hour before. I couldn't impose, it's no imposition, Owen said firmly. My sister's there. She'll help you get comfortable while I fetch your family to let them know you're safe. The wagon was getting closer, and Abigail could now hear the voices of its occupants. Making a split-second decision, she nodded. Thank you. Owen helped her onto his horse, then mounted behind her. The ease with which he lifted her made Abigail stiffen with embarrassment, but if Owen noticed her weight, he gave no indication. With a click of his tongue, he urged the horse forward, away from the road and across the open grassland toward his ranch. I didn't catch your name, he said as they rode. Abigail Reynolds, she replied, conscious of his strong arms around her as he held the reins. Pleased to meet you, Miss Reynolds, Owen said, though I wish it had been under happier circumstances. The Ryder ranch was modest but well-maintained, with a sturdy main house, a barn, and several corrals. As they approached, a woman emerged from the house, shading her eyes against the sun. Owen, what on earth? She called as they drew near. Sarah, this is Miss Reynolds. She needs some help and a place to rest, Owen explained as he dismounted and then reached up to assist Abigail down. Instead of letting her slide down awkwardly, as she was accustomed to doing when riding, Owen placed his hands at her waist and lifted her clear off the horse, setting her gently on the ground as if she weighed nothing at all. There you go, Miss Reynolds, he said with a smile. Safe and sound. His sister Sarah rushed forward, her eyes widening at the sight of Abigail's wedding dress. Oh my goodness, what happened? Before Abigail could answer, Owen intervened. Miss Reynolds has had a difficult day. Could you help her get settled in the guest room while I ride back to town? Sarah nodded, immediately taking charge. Of course, come with me, dear, we'll get you out of that dress and into something comfortable. As Owen remounted his horse, Abigail turned to him. Mr. Ryder, I don't know how to thank you. No thanks needed, he said, settling his hat back on his head. And please call me Owen. Then you must call me Abigail, he smiled, a warm, genuine smile that reached his eyes. Abigail it is. I'll be back soon with news from your family. As Owen rode away, Abigail felt an unexpected flutter in her chest, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Something like hope. Sarah Ryder was as kind as her brother, helping Abigail out of her ruined wedding dress without a single comment about its size. She provided a simple but clean dress that belonged to her, which fit Abigail surprisingly well. I've always been fuller-figured myself, Sarah explained with a casual shrug. Comes in handy during the winter months, I say. The matter-of-fact way Sarah spoke about her body without shame or apology was novel to Abigail, who had spent her life trying to make herself smaller, both physically and metaphorically. After washing her face and rebraiding her hair, Abigail felt somewhat restored. Sarah led her to the kitchen, where she poured them both cups of strong, sweet coffee. My brother didn't tell me much, Sarah said, but I'm guessing there was supposed to be a wedding today. Abigail nodded, staring into her coffee cup. Yes, but it didn't happen. His loss, Sarah said firmly. Any man who'd let you go isn't worth your tears. You don't understand, Abigail sighed. Everyone was laughing, the way they looked at me. I've never been so humiliated. Sarah reached across the table and squeezed Abigail's hand. People can be cruel, especially when they're insecure themselves. But Owen and we judge folks by their character, not their appearance. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of a horse approaching. Moments later, Owen entered, removing his hat as he stepped into the kitchen. "Your mother was beside herself with worry," he said to Abigail. "I told her you were safe and would be staying with us tonight if that's all right with you." Abigail nodded gratefully. Did you see Thomas?" Owen's expression hardened slightly. "No, but I heard he'd left town on the afternoon stage to Riverton." He hesitated, then added, "Your mother asked me to bring you these." He produced a small bundle wrapped in cloth, some personal items she thought you might need. "Thank you," Abigail said, accepting the bundle. "You've been so kind, both of you, I don't know why." "Because it's the right thing to do," Owen said simply. "Now I expect you're hungry. Sarah makes a fine beef stew." Over dinner, Owen and Sarah told Abigail about their ranch. They'd inherited it from their parents 5 years ago and had worked hard to make it profitable, specializing in breeding sturdy horses suited to the rugged Texas terrain. "We're small compared to some operations," Owen explained, "but we're growing. Just hired 2 more hands last month." Abigail found herself relaxing in their company. Neither sibling seemed to pay any mind to her size, treating her with a natural respect that made her feel, for perhaps the first time in her adult life, completely at ease. After dinner, Sarah insisted on turning in early, leaving Owen and Abigail alone on the porch. The Texas night was warm, with a gentle breeze carrying the scent of sage and distant rain. "What will you do now?" Owen asked after a comfortable silence. Abigail sighed. "I don't know. I can't go back to Cedar Creek not to live anyway. I could never face those people again." "You could," Owen said, his voice steady. "You're stronger than you think." "You don't know me," Abigail countered, though there was no heat in her words. "I know enough," Owen replied. "I know you've been hurt badly, but you're still standing. That takes courage." His words touched something deep inside her, a part of herself she'd forgotten existed. "I used to have dreams, you know, before Thomas. I wanted to open a dress shop. I've always been good with a needle." "Why didn't you?" "My father died, leaving my mother and me with little money. Thomas offered security, respectability. I convinced myself it was enough." She laughed bitterly. "And now I have nothing." "That's not true," Owen said. "You have your skill, your dreams, and you have time." They talked late into the night, sharing stories and aspirations. Owen told her about his own struggles. How many in the county had predicted the Ryder siblings would fail after their parents died? How satisfying it had been to prove them wrong. "People love to tell you what you can't do," he said. "The trick is not listening." When Abigail finally retired to the guest room, her heart felt lighter than it had in years, even despite the day's humiliation. There was something about Owen Ryder, his directness, his quiet confidence, his complete acceptance of her that soothed the raw wound of Thomas's rejection. The next morning, Owen offered to drive Abigail to her mother's house to collect her belongings. "You're welcome to stay with us until you decide what's next," he said over breakfast. "Sarah enjoys the company and we have plenty of room." "I couldn't possibly. You could help with the accounts," Sarah interjected. "Owen's terrible with numbers and I'm too busy with the household and garden. We'd pay you, of course." Abigail looked between the siblings, searching for signs of pity or obligation, but found only genuine warmth. I'd like that, thank you." The visit to Cedar Creek was difficult but necessary. People stared as Owen's wagon rolled down Main Street, and whispers followed them into the general store where they stopped for supplies. Abigail kept her head high, drawing strength from Owen's solid presence beside her. At her mother's small house on the edge of town, Mrs. Reynolds greeted her with tears and embraces. "Oh, Abby, I was so worried. Are you all right?" "I'm fine, Mother," Abigail assured her. "Better than fine, actually. I've been offered a position at the Ryder Ranch, keeping their accounts." Mrs. Reynolds looked surprised, then relieved. That's wonderful news, darling, but are you sure? After everything that's happened, I'm sure, Abigail said firmly. I need a fresh start away from Cedar Creek and its memories. While Abigail packed her belongings, Owen spoke quietly with Mrs. Reynolds in the kitchen. Abigail couldn't hear their conversation, but when she returned, her mother looked at Owen with newfound respect. Mr. Ryder has assured me you'll be well looked after at his ranch, Mrs. Reynolds said, and that I'm welcome to visit whenever I wish. The ride back to the ranch was quiet, both Abigail and Owen lost in their own thoughts. As they crested the hill overlooking the Ryder property, Owen broke the silence. I want you to know something, Abigail, he said, his eyes fixed on the horizon. I meant what I said to your mother. You'll be respected at my ranch, by me, by Sarah, by all our hands. Abigail felt tears prick her eyes at the simple dignity of his promise. Thank you, Owen. That means more than you know. The weeks that followed were a revelation for Abigail. She settled into a routine, keeping the ranch's books in the mornings and helping Sarah with household tasks in the afternoons. To her surprise, she found she enjoyed the physical work feeding chickens, tending the vegetable garden, even learning to milk the cow. You're a natural, Sarah told her one evening as they prepared dinner. City folks often struggle with ranch life, but you've taken to it like a duck to water. I never thought I could do this kind of work, Abigail admitted. In Cedar Creek, I was always the bookish one, too delicate for physical labor, Sarah snorted. Delicate? You carried 2 buckets of feed across the yard yesterday without breaking a sweat. There's nothing delicate about that, it's strength. Gradually, Abigail began to see her body differently, not as something to be hidden or ashamed of, but as a source of power. Her arms grew stronger from carrying water and firewood. Her skin tanned in the Texas sun. She found herself breathing more deeply, standing taller. Owen noticed the change in her. You look happy, he observed one evening as they sat on the porch after dinner, a ritual they'd fallen into without discussion. I am happy, Abigail realized. Happier than I've been in years. It suits you, Owen said softly. Happiness, I mean, your eyes shine. The compliment warmed her, and she felt a now familiar flutter in her chest whenever Owen was near. Over the weeks, she'd grown increasingly aware of him, the way his shirt stretched across his broad shoulders as he worked with the horses, the gentle way he spoke to the animals, the sound of his laughter when something amused him. But she'd also noticed how the local girls flirted with him whenever they visited town together. Owen was handsome, successful, and unmarried, a prize catch in the territory. Next to the slender, pretty girls who batted their eyelashes at him, Abigail felt invisible. Yet Owen never seemed to notice those girls. Instead, he sought Abigail's company, bringing her wildflowers he'd found while riding the range or sitting with her in comfortable silence as the sun set over the Texas plains. One afternoon, as summer gave way to early fall, Abigail was hanging laundry when she heard riders approaching. Looking up, she saw 3 men she didn't recognize. Their manner set her on edge. They rode too fast, too carelessly across the ranch yard. Hello there, pretty lady, the leader called, reining in his horse. Is the boss around? Before Abigail could answer, Owen emerged from the barn, his expression guarded. Can I help you, gentlemen? The leader dismounted, a tall, wiry man with cold eyes. Name's Harlan Blackett. These are my brothers, Jed and Caleb. We're looking for work. Owen sized them up with a practiced eye. I'm not hiring at present. Blackett's smile didn't reach his eyes. Word in town is different. Heard you were expanding your operation. You heard wrong, Owen said firmly. Now, if there's nothing else, actually, there is, Blackett interrupted, his gaze sliding to Abigail. We haven't been properly introduced to your housekeeper. Abigail felt a chill despite the warm day. There was something in Blackett's tone that made her skin crawl. Miss Reynolds is my business partner, Owen said, moving subtly to place himself between Abigail and the visitors. And this conversation is over. Good day, gentlemen. The Blackett brothers exchanged looks but eventually mounted up. As they rode away, Harlan called back, We'll be around, Ryder. Case you change your mind. Who were they? Abigail asked once the Ryders were out of earshot. Trouble, Owen said grimly. The Blacketts have a reputation in these parts, cattle rustling, extortion worse. Their usual territory is north of here, but it seems they're expanding. That evening, Owen called a meeting with his ranch hands, warning them to be vigilant. Double the night watch, he instructed, and keep your rifles close. For days, the ranch operated under a cloud of tension. Twice, they spotted riders watching the property from the ridge line. Owen took to carrying his pistol at all times, even during meals. Abigail found him checking the windows late one night, his face drawn with worry. "Do you think they'll try something?" she asked. Owen sighed. "Men like the Blacketts, they're like wolves. They target what they perceive as weak. Unfortunately, with just me, Sarah, and 4 hands, we might look like easy pickings." "But we're not weak," Abigail said fiercely. Owen smiled at her use of we. "No, we're not, but we need to be careful all the same." He hesitated, then added, "Abigail, if things get bad. I want you and Sarah to go to town, stay with your mother until it's safe." "I won't run," she said firmly. "This is my home now, too." The words hung between them, charged with meaning neither was ready to acknowledge. Owen reached out, briefly touching her hand. "Just be careful." The confrontation came 3 days later. Abigail was in the garden when she heard shouting from the corral. Running toward the sound, she found the Blackett brothers and 2 other men facing off against Owen and his hands. "Those horses are coming with us, Ryder," Harlan Blackett was saying, his hand resting on the butt of his pistol. "Consider it a tax for operating in our territory." "This isn't your territory," Owen replied, his voice steady despite the danger. "And those horses aren't yours to take." Abigail's heart raced as she assessed the situation. The Blacketts had positioned themselves strategically, making it clear they were prepared for violence. Owen and his men were outnumbered. Without thinking, Abigail strode forward, positioning herself next to Owen. "Mr. Blackett," she said, her voice carrying across the yard, "I've just come from the house, where I was writing letters to Sheriff Davis and Marshal Wilson, informing them of your threats against this ranch." It was a bluff. She'd been doing no such thing, but she spoke with such conviction that doubt flickered across Blackett's face. "The letters will go out on today's mail coach," she continued. "Unless, of course, you and your men leave now and don't return." Owen gave her a warning glance but didn't contradict her. The standoff stretched for several tense seconds before Harlan Blackett spat on the ground. "This ain't over, Ryder," he growled, but he signaled his men to back down. As they rode away, he called, "Keep your woman close. She's got more spine than you." Once they were gone, Owen turned to Abigail, his expression a mix of relief and anger. "That was incredibly dangerous. They could have shot you where you stood." "They could have shot any of us," she countered. "I saw a way to help, so I took it." One of the ranch hands, a weathered man named Pete, chuckled. "She's got you there, boss. The lady's quick thinking probably saved us a world of trouble." Owen's anger faded, replaced by something like admiration. "I suppose she did it that." To Abigail, he said more softly, "Thank you. But please, never put yourself at risk like that again." That night, unable to sleep, Abigail found Owen on the porch, rifle across his knees as he kept watch. Without a word, she sat beside him, offering a cup of coffee. "You should be asleep," he said, accepting the coffee gratefully. "So should you." They sat in companionable silence, the night alive with the sounds of insects and distant coyotes. After a while, Owen spoke. "I was scared today," he admitted. "Not for myself, but for you. When you walked into that standoff, my heart nearly stopped." "I'm sorry I frightened you," Abigail said, "but I'm not sorry I acted. This ranch is important to me. The people here are important to me." Owen turned to look at her, his eyes reflecting the moonlight. "You've become important to us too, Abigail, to Sarah, to me." The air between them seemed to thicken with unspoken feelings. Abigail thought of Thomas, of his rejection and what it had taught her about the fragility of her own heart. Could she risk that pain again? As if reading her thoughts, Owen said gently, "I know you've been hurt." I know trust doesn't come easily after that, but I want you to know that when I look at you, I see someone remarkable, someone strong and brave and beautiful." "Beautiful?" Abigail echoed, the word catching in her throat. "Yes, beautiful," Owen said firmly. "From the moment I saw you on that road in your torn wedding dress, I thought you were the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. Not despite your size, Abigail. There is no despite about it. You are beautiful exactly as you are." Tears welled in Abigail's eyes. No one had ever spoken to her that way with such honest admiration, such complete acceptance. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. Owen set aside his rifle and took her hands in his. "You don't have to say anything, just know that's how I see you." In that moment, something shifted between them, a door opening to possibilities Abigail had thought forever closed to her. The Blacketts didn't return in the days that followed, but Owen took no chances. He sent Sarah to stay with friends in town and hired 3 more experienced ranch hands. The sheriff, alerted to the threat, increased his patrols in the area. Life on the ranch continued, but with a new undercurrent of awareness between Abigail and Owen. Their evening conversations grew longer, more personal. He told her about his dreams for the ranch, about wanting children someday to inherit the land he loved. She shared her childhood memories, her love of reading, her secret desire to see the ocean one day. One crisp October morning, Owen announced he needed to ride to a neighboring ranch to discuss combining their herds for the winter drive to the railhead. "I'll be gone overnight," he told Abigail as he saddled his horse. "Will you be all right here with the hands?" "Of course," she assured him. "Be safe." He hesitated, then reached out to touch her cheek. "I'll be back tomorrow, we'll talk then." There was a promise in his words that made Abigail's heart race. She nodded, unable to speak past the emotion in her throat. After Owen left, Abigail threw herself into work, helping the cook prepare meals for the hands and catching up on the ranch accounts. The day passed uneventfully, and she retired early, looking forward to Owen's return the next day. She woke before dawn to the smell of smoke. Rushing to the window, Abigail saw flames licking at the corner of the barn. 2 shadowy figures moved in the darkness, and even from a distance, she recognized Harlan Blackett's distinctive walk. Without hesitation, Abigail grabbed the pistol Owen had insisted she keep by her bed and ran outside, shouting to wake the hands. "Fire! The barn's on fire, and the Blacketts are here!" The ranch erupted into chaos. The hands rushed from the bunkhouse, some heading for the barn to save the horses, others grabbing weapons to confront the intruders. Gunfire erupted from the shadows, and Abigail saw one of the hands fall. Taking cover behind a water trough, she assessed the situation. The Blacketts had chosen their moment well, with Owen away and half the hands fighting the fire. The ranch was vulnerable. But they hadn't counted on Abigail. Remembering Owen's lessons on shooting, she steadied her breathing, took aim at a figure moving toward the house, and fired. She missed, but the shot was close enough to send the man diving for cover. "Miss Reynolds," Pete called from nearby. "Get back in the house." "No," she shouted back. "I'm staying." For what seemed like hours but was probably only minutes, the battle raged. The hands managed to extinguish the fire before it consumed the barn, but 2 of them were wounded in the process. The Blacketts, realizing their plan had failed, began to withdraw. As the gunfire died down, Abigail emerged cautiously from her position. In the growing light of dawn, she could see the ranch hands securing the property, counting heads to ensure everyone was accounted for. Then, from behind her, she heard the unmistakable click of a gun being cocked. "You've been a thorn in my side, lady," Harlan Blackett growled. Abigail turned slowly to find the outlaw aiming a revolver at her chest, his face twisted with rage and hatred. "Your man Ryder made a big mistake crossing me," Blackett continued. "Now I'm going to take something he values." Abigail's mind raced. The hands were too far away to help. She still held her pistol, but Blackett would shoot her before she could raise it. "Mr. Blackett," she said, fighting to keep her voice steady, "killing me won't solve anything. It will only ensure that every lawman in the territory hunts you down." Blackett's eyes narrowed. Maybe. But Ryder will suffer knowing he wasn't here to protect you. That's worth something to me. And what will it cost you? A deep voice called from behind Blackett. Your life, perhaps? Owen sat on his horse not 20 yards away, rifle trained on Blackett's back. His face was a mask of cold fury. Drop your gun, Blackett, Owen commanded, or I swear to God I'll put a bullet through your spine. For a moment Blackett hesitated, his finger tightening on the trigger. Abigail held her breath, eyes locked with Owen's over Blackett's shoulder. Then with a curse, Blackett lowered his gun and let it fall to the ground. This still ain't over, Ryder. Yes, it is, Owen said, dismounting but keeping his rifle trained on Blackett. Pete, get some rope. We're taking Mr. Blackett to the sheriff. As the hands secured Blackett, Owen rushed to Abigail's side. Are you hurt? He demanded, his hands gentle as they searched for injuries. I'm fine, she assured him, though she was trembling from the close call. How did you know to come back? I didn't, Owen admitted. I finished my business early and decided to ride through the night. Thank God I did. He pulled her into a fierce embrace. When I saw the smoke, heard the gunfire, I thought I'd lost you. You didn't lose me, Abigail whispered against his chest. I'm right here. Owen drew back, his eyes intense as they searched her face. I love you, Abigail Reynolds. I think I've loved you since I found you on that road in your wedding dress, looking like a queen despite your tears. Abigail's heart soared at his words. I love you too, Owen. I've been afraid to admit it, afraid to trust my heart again, but I do love you. In front of the ranch hands, in the aftermath of violence, with dawn breaking over the Texas plains, Owen lifted Abigail into his arms as easily as if she were made of air, spinning her around in joyous celebration. My queen, he said when he set her down, his face alight with love and pride. My brave, beautiful queen. 4 months later, Abigail stood once again in a wedding dress, this one made by her own hands with Sarah's help, designed to celebrate rather than conceal her curves. The small chapel on the Ryder Ranch was filled not with mockery but with genuine well-wishers, including Abigail's mother, the neighboring ranchers, and all the hands who had fought alongside them against the Blacketts. Harlan Blackett and his brothers were now in prison, thanks to the testimony of Owen, Abigail, and the ranch hands. The territory was safer, and the Ryder Ranch was thriving under the joint management of Owen and Abigail. As she walked toward Owen, who waited for her at the altar with love shining in his eyes, Abigail reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From humiliation to triumph, from rejection to acceptance, from shame to pride, it had been a road of transformation. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Owen surprised her by sweeping her into his arms, lifting her as easily as that first day when he'd helped her from his horse. My wife, he said, his voice carrying through the chapel. My partner, my queen. And as the assembled guests cheered, Abigail felt the last remnants of her old insecurities fall away. In Owen's arms, in his eyes, in his heart, she was exactly as she should be, not too much, never too much, but perfectly, wonderfully enough. Years later, with 3 children running around the expanded Ryder Ranch and a thriving dress business that catered to women of all sizes, Abigail would look back on that humiliating day in Cedar Creek as a blessing in disguise. Had Thomas not rejected her, had the townspeople not mocked her, she might never have fled down that dusty road where a kind cowboy found her and saw in her what no one else had: strength, beauty, and worth beyond measure. In the end, Abigail realized, love wasn't about being accepted despite who you are. True love, the kind she found with Owen, was about being celebrated for exactly who you are, every inch, every curve, every piece of your heart and soul. And that, she knew with absolute certainty, was worth more than all the gold in Texas.